What's up, everybody? My name is Kason. Welcome back to the BBR. This is week number 6, and your Toronto Razor Leafs are facing off against Tog, aka Tony. And now, don't let this record fool you. They may be sitting at an 0-5 minus 19 record, but this is actually not a true translation of what we are facing. First of all, this is not the coach who started off this season. They recently took over this team, and this is not the roster that has been losing these matches. They changed the vast majority of this team. Pretty much all they kept, I think, was the Zapdos and the Greninja. The rest of it pretty much has changed, and honestly has become a pretty terrifying sand team. And I am not looking forward to facing it. I think it's going to be pretty tough to win. So this record, even though it shows they're 0-5, this is going to be no easy task, as that really doesn't tell the story at all of what we're going up against. They have a number of threats with a Sand Rush Excadrill who can also Terra. They have a Greninja who gets Battle Bond and Protean. E-Speed from Entei is always terrifying, and Tyranitar is really no joke, as we recently faced off against that in the PPLNX, and it did a lot of damage to us. So a number of strong mons to face, and this is what we are going to bring to try and combat that. The first mon we're going to bring this week is Butcher, our Iron Hands Terra Electric with the Shuka Berry, which means we take half damage from a super effective ground type attack. With Drain Punch, Thunder Punch, Heavy Slam, and Sword Stance, a bunch of Spadef, and Adamant Nature with 156 attack and 100 base speed, we should likely outspeed like a Tyranitar or a Weezing if they're not speed invested, if they're just straight bulk. So ultimately, if we can outspeed them, we can easily just one-hit KO them if we get a Sword Stance up. Thunder Punch and Drain Punch pretty much cover the entire team other than that, so if we can get a Sword Stance up early, especially before he Terra Ghosts his Excadrill, we could be in an incredible position for the rest of the match. The second Pokemon we're bringing this week is Queen Maeve, our SKARMORY. We are rocking Terra Ground, but I'm not going to click that. That is basically just a bluff, as I am most likely going to Terra Electric on turn 1 with hands, but we've got Rocky Helmet and Sturdy with basically max defense, just a tiny bit of speed investment in case they're trying to creep minimum speed SKARMORY. We have Body Press, Stealth Rock, and Roost. That's pretty much all we need, unless the Excadrill goes for Terra Ghost, which I think is very likely, considering basically everybody we've played all season is Terra Ghosted into us, because it is a very good type into our team. Basically, all we're trying to do is get some hazards up, maybe get some chip with the Rocky Helmet, and if we can get a Body Press off, that's fantastic. The third mon we're bringing this week is the only mon, aside from Valiant, that we've brought every single week up to this point, and I think it looks decent. It's Choice Scarf with Rotom Heat here. And we've got Frenchie rocking Overheat, Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and Will-O-Wisp. We have a bunch of speed, max special attack with a Modest Nature, and 80 into HP, so we would outspeed anything that's not Choice Scarfed here. And ultimately, the reason for this, why I'm running Choice Scarf, is because I believe I can get into a position to force his Excadrill to Terra out of the ground type. And if that's the case, we can easily just Choice Scarf, Volt Switch all over the place, and I think that can be pretty effective. If it doesn't Terra, we do have Overheat that can potentially just one-shot that Excadrill as well. The fourth mon we're bringing this week is something that I think we had to have a dedicated switch into Greninja for, and that is what I'm hoping to use it as, Blastoise. We've got Soldier Boy rocking the Assault Vest item with Torrent as the ability, a good amount of Spadef, 252 in HP and 132 into special attack. So we're not going to get 2-hit KO'd basically by anything from Greninja, unless it's like Specs Grass Knot, then it can do a ton of damage to us, but I don't expect it to run that, as I think it is pretty much pigeonholed into a specific 4 moves into our team. Dark Pulse, Aura Sphere, Flip Turn, and Rapid Spin are here to remove hazards, get some slow momentum, and ultimately have decent coverage into the entire roster. If Greninja is not Battle Bond or Choice Scarf, though, I wanted something that would be the fastest thing in the game, and that is what we are going for here with the Iron Valiant. With a Naive Nature, 168 speed, Moonblast, Psychic, Close Combat, and Vacuum Wave with the Booster Energy item. So we're going to outspeed everything unless it's +1 speed Greninja. Moonblast is a really nice click into most of the mons. Psychic is here for the Galarian Weezing, as it is going to take a Moonblast pretty well, and Close Combat can easily one-hit KO even the bulkiest of Tyranitars unless they are rocking Choppleberry. So the last mon we are bringing is Huey the Dragonite with the Heavy Duty Boots, Adamant Nature, a good amount of HP, and 96 speed. Now we do not outspeed a max speed Greninja even after +1 here, but we actually don't need to, because the move that we're actually going to click into that thing is Extreme Speed. So ultimately we don't need to outspeed that. It does offer us just a little bit more of opportunity to put some bulk in there. Ultimately, if Zapdos and Slowbro are out of the picture, this thing kind of just wins, especially the Slowbro. The Zapdos we can at least kind of handle with an Extreme Speed if it's, you know, chipped or something like that. Ultimately, I think if we can manage to chip some things down, this thing could be a pretty decent win con. So guys, this is the team we are rocking going into week number 6. I'm looking forward to this match. Best of luck to Tog, aka Tony. Hopefully we have a good clean match and it should be fun. All right, guys, so here we are with the battle, and I just wanted to let you know this is unfortunately going to be a post-com game. I do try to basically live commentary all my games, but for this one specifically, I basically had to try and keep quiet. And I didn't want to like wake up my wife. She was on a weird work schedule at this time. So she was taking a nap and I really want her to be able to sleep. So yeah, I'm going to post-com this one. But ultimately, basically looking at this team, he's got Greninja, Zapdos, Galarian Weezing, Slowbro, Excadrill, and Tyranitar. So the Mienshao not being here is kind of nice in my opinion. I didn't really want to see that thing, as it is a pretty effective choice Scarfer. With the Regenerator ability, can U-turn around, deal a ton of damage with close combat into a handful of my mons. So that was something I was definitely happy not to see. I was a little surprised to see the Slowbro. Yeah, honestly, still a pretty good mon though. With Regenerator, can do a number of different things. So yeah, I'm not going to disrespect it. In my opinion, my biggest things here is, how do I get around the Excadrill? How do I get around the Greninja? Those are kind of his two main win cons, so if I can get around those, I should be in pretty good shape. I end up leading the Iron Hands here because I think it actually does lead pretty well into basically everything. We do have the Shuka for the Excadrill, and if we get to a +2, we basically one-hit KO everything except for Zapdos. So that is the position we're in. So hopping into the fight here, Togga's going to send out the Zapdos, and now, I will be honest, I was pretty excited about this lead when I saw this. I think this is a pretty good matchup for us, as we are the Terra Electric on hands. For me, this seems like a no-brainer. I am just going to Terra Electric right off rip and just go for an SD. There's really nothing this thing can do to me to deal a ton of damage. And honestly, I expect to switch out probably into something like the Galarian Weezing to try and check this thing, even though it doesn't actually fully check this thing. So there's a chance that this thing could just go for Volt Switch if it has it. I think that would probably be the move because it would deal damage and then be able to pivot into something else. As I don't think they should ever expect like a Drain Punch, so could go for a Volt Switch into maybe something like Excadrill and Terra Ghost on the next turn, but ultimately you're going to see they stay in. So I'm thinking they probably went for Volt Switch here. We're going to get the Terra Electric off, and no matter what, I know that we're going to be +2 here. So unless it clicked like Whirlwind, which I don't think it gets, we should be in a pretty good spot here after turn number 1. So we're going to see, does it go for Volt Switch? It does not. It goes for Hurricane, and not only that, it misses. I'll be honest, this would not have done a whole lot of damage, this Hurricane, but it is unfortunate for them to miss on turn number 1, and now we are sitting fully healthy with a +2 Iron Hands. Now I think for a moment, maybe, just maybe, I could go for a second Sword Stance and just try and win the game, but then I think about it and I look at my calcs and I realize I don't really need another Sword Stance. +2 Iron Hands pretty much just kind of crushes everything, and it's more important for me to just have HP here, because I need to be able to live an Earthquake from Excadrill with my Shuka. So I decide, you know what, I'm just going to go for a Thunder Punch here. I don't know if they're going to stay in now that I've Terra Electric'd. I don't think they would just keep going for Hurricane because it's really not going to do a whole lot of damage. And you're going to see that's exactly what they do. They actually do go for a Hurricane. Again, it does not do a whole lot of damage. It does get the confusion though. 30% chance to confuse. And it does land, which is unfortunate. So I'm praying at this moment, Iron Hands, please hit this thing. And he does not listen to me. He ends up hitting himself, taking 102 damage from the hit. So not only do they hit themselves, this is pretty bad because the turn 1, obviously they missed Hurricane. And you could say, okay, they missed Hurricane, we get confusion, it's even. It's really not though, because we've taken more damage than we would have from 2 Hurricanes. And we've done no damage to the Zapdos, which in reality, if we hit this thing would be below half, and it would basically be forced to roost or attack and die in the next turn. And not only this, I'm thinking if I don't hit the Zapdos right here, my Iron Hands could go down for basically nothing if I hit myself in confusion again. So unfortunate. I don't know if Hurricane was the play, but it ended up working out really well for them. So I'm kind of in a tough spot because I was thinking after turn 1, Iron Hands might literally just like win the game from turn 1. But here, now I'm in a pretty tough spot, and I'm thinking hopefully I can at least just take Zapdos down with me because I don't know what else I could get after this. So you're going to see they are sitting thinking about what move they want to go for. They ultimately do click the Hurricane again, dealing another like 70 damage or so. We are still confused and hoping, please break through. This time we do actually break through, and I'm expecting this to deal about 65% or so, expecting Fizz Def Zapdos. It is not Fizz Def. That thing is very squishy. It is very offensive. I guess I probably could have known that based off the calc. Maybe I could have calced a little better. But this is actually unfortunate because now it means Drain Punch will not get us as much health back. So I was actually hoping it would be a little bulkier so that I could steal more HP, but we are not in this spot. So I'm praying, just praying. Maybe they go for a Roost here. Maybe they Roost, and then I can just Drain Punch a bunch of health back because they would lose its flying type. And that is kind of my only way into Iron Hands basically just going crazy in this match. Because otherwise, if they hit another Hurricane, I am definitely within range of an Excadrill Earthquake even after my Shuckleberry. So they end up staying in. They do not go for Hurricane. They go for Thunderbolt to guarantee some damage. And this is actually a pretty smart play by them. They do get a crit, which is, again, an extra little bit of unfortunateness, I guess. We're going to Drain Punch a little bit of HP back. And now I'm thinking this basically just freely offers Excadrill into the game. They can come in, and even though we're Shuckleberry, we are not going to die to this, or we're not going to live this Earthquake. I think I calced that based on certain spreads, if that Thunderbolt didn't crit, I think we had a chance to live Earthquake after Shuckleberry. But yeah, regardless, between the confusion hitting ourselves and the crit, we're in a pretty tough spot because now I know Iron Hands is not going to kill anything else at this moment. When I think we would have been in a really good spot otherwise. But that's how the game goes sometimes, and I'm just thinking, you know what, I have other ways to get around this, and I'm not going to tilt. You know, I'm just going to try and play my best and hopefully make some work. We're still up 1-0 at this point, so that's pretty good. They do go into the Excadrill as I expect, and now I think, okay, do I just switch this thing out? Is there any reason to save this Iron Hands? Because it's going to die even though it is Shuckleberry, and I think, you know what, they have a Slowbro, and they have a Galarian Weezing. And based on my EV spread, I should always outspeed the Slowbro and threaten it with a Thunder Punch since I'm Terra Electric. And I also might outspeed Weezing and be able to just Heavy Slam it later in the game. So I think this thing might actually be worth saving. So maybe I just try and make kind of a hard read and go into something like a Rotom to basically ignore the Earthquake. Now, I believe Mold Breaker, when it comes in, it tells you the ability, and I did not see the Mold Breaker, so I know that it cannot hit me with this Earthquake. So I go into Rotom, hoping that that's the case. If somehow they make a crazy read on like a Rock Slide, then well played to them, but I think they pretty much have to go for an EQ here, and that's exactly what they're going to do. So at this point, we take no damage, and I'm thinking at least I've got the Iron Hands saved for later, and I think almost guaranteed that Tyranitar is what's coming in here, because he can't take an Overheat on this Excadrill. Even if he Terra Ghosts, he doesn't want to take that kind of damage. It's going to deal a ton. Volt Switch does not work in Excadrill. So Will-O-Wisp just feels like the safe play as Tyranitar can basically eat anything that I go for pretty well because its Spadef is just so crazy. So I think, you know what, if I can just get a burn off on this thing right away, that can be really beneficial. So I get the burn on Tyranitar, which is really nice. Now this thing is going to deal half damage. I double check, make sure that this thing isn't Lumberry, and it is not. Now, he does not know at this point that we are Choice Scarf because he hard swapped out. But obviously, I don't want to stay in here. He might figure this out because I don't Volt Switch out. But now I decide, what do I want to go into? This is a burned Tyranitar, and I think Homelander actually could take whatever hit it goes for pretty well. If it's a Stone Edge, we resist it. If it's Crunch, we resist it, and it's burned. So realistically, there's nothing this thing is going to click that's going to deal a ton of damage. So I actually feel pretty safe to go to Homelander here. I didn't expect this thing to be like the cleanup killer because Greninja can always outspeed if it's Scarf or Battle Bond. So I just want to bring this thing in and get some chip. So we're going to come in. He's going to see we're Booster Speed. And I'm at this point thinking, okay, I can threaten with a close combat. That would just kill. They end up just going for Stealth Rock. So we actually take 0 damage, which is really, really nice. We'll obviously take some Sand Chip, but that really should be no big deal here. And we're sitting pretty good here. Now I'm thinking close combat is super obvious. Moonblast does not kill, but it does deal a ton. And my expectation is that they're going to go into Galarian Weezing here, which is why I'm clicking Moonblast. Again, this would not have one-hit KO'd Tyranitar, but it would have done a ton. And Moonblast will at least do more than close combat, so this felt like a good mid-ground play. And I see this does way more than I expect, and that's because we actually get a critical hit. So I'm thinking, okay, that's actually pretty fortunate, because without that critical hit, I don't think I can click Psychic on this next turn to try and claim a kill. But because of the crit, this actually gives me more confidence, because I know this Psychic will kill. Whereas before, I don't think that it would have. So if I didn't get the crit, I would not have clicked this Psychic move, to be honest. But I did get it, so I do end up going for it. Now, immediately after I clicked this, I think, if he's Psychic Resist Berry, I could be in trouble. And sure enough, that's exactly what it is. So we're going to go for the Psychic, and I'm praying that it kills through the Resist, and it barely does not. Which means I am in trouble because this thing is going to go for a Sludge Bomb and it's going to take us out. So honestly, that crit actually ended up a little unfortunate for us because had I not gotten it, I would not have felt confident going for the Psychic because I don't know if I would have killed or not. So I think I would have swapped out this Valiant. The Weezing does die to the sand, which is nice, but that kind of stinks for us because had I not gotten the crit, I would have swapped out into something else, probably like my Rotom or my Skarmory even. It can be a pretty nice switch in there. And so unfortunately we do lose our Valiant. So that crit, I actually would have preferred not to get, to be completely honest. But in this spot, I don't know what he's going into. I don't know if he gets to see what I go into. His Pokemon died last, so in my opinion, like, I should be able to see what they go into. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But we're going into a mon, and I'm thinking, what is the safest mon to bring in? And I'm thinking at this spot, you know what, Huey actually looks pretty good. We're going to come in at 100% HP. Obviously, the sand is up, but it would allow us a turn to get Dragon Dance up against a couple of different mons. And if it's like the Greninja, we can pressure it with some extreme speed. Ultimately, I wasn't really sure who I wanted to go into here. I probably could have went into Rotom, but I obviously go into Dragonite. And now seeing that the server is communicating, that tells me that I think they get to know what Pokemon I'm bringing in. I guess that kind of makes sense. I wasn't sure how exactly that was going to work because their own Pokemon died to their own Pokemon, but I guess he gets the, you know, preference on who they get to go into. So at this point, I don't know what this Greninja set is. It could be Protean, it could be Battle Bond. If it goes for like a Specs Ice Beam, I could just get crushed here. But ultimately, I decide, you know what, I just really want to get a bunch of chip on this thing. And if it is Protean and Specs and does a ton to me, that at least tells me it's not Battle Bond, which is really, really nice for me. So I honestly decide I don't think a Dragon Dance is worth it. If I can just extreme speed this thing and deal, you know, close to half, that could be worth it. I do think about going into my Blastoise here for a moment because it is my, like, switch in defensively to Greninja. But I think at this point, unless I hard swap out, I'm going to take Sand Chip. I'm going to take Chip from Greninja. It's going to be bad. And E-Speed does over half, which is really, really nice. And they do reveal to be Protean, which is also great because I was more worried about the Battle Bond. This thing could still be Choice Scarf. Could be Choice Spec still, even with U-Turn. Obviously, they're going to break my multi-scale, and I expect at this point to go into Slowbro, as Slowbro can threaten with an Ice Beam, and we ultimately really don't do a whole lot of damage to it. So, at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about where the game is, though, and I'm thinking, okay, based on that damage on how much I did E-Speed to Greninja, as long as I keep Dragonite alive, Greninja really should never get out of hand this game. Even if it is, you know, a Scarf set or Spec set or whatever, we can always come in and E-Speed later and basically just claim a kill. So they do go into the Slowbro, so both of us are going to take Sandstorm Chip. Again, not really a big deal. And they do reveal to be leftovers, so they're basically just going to heal that off, basically like it never happened. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, they're probably clicking Ice Beam. What do I want to go into? And I have a few different options here. I could go into the Blastoise. I could go into Rotom. I also could go into Iron Hands. Now, 2020 hindsight, I think my best play here is actually to go into Blastoise. I wanted to keep it healthy for the Greninja to have a defensive switch in, but because Greninja is so low, I can always revenge it with Dragonite with E-Speed, so I think Blastoise was the play. I don't really know why I make this decision, to be completely honest. I end up going into Iron Hands, and I think up to this point in the game, I think this is my biggest mistake. I think up to this point, I think I've played pretty clean. I don't really regret any decisions I've made up until this point, because not only does Rocks deal a bunch of damage, Psychic is actually the play instead of Ice Beam, comes out and kills Iron Hands. And I wasn't really thinking about this at the time, because as I said before, this thing outspeeds the Slowbro, and he has still not Terra Ghosted his Excadrill, which means that he does not have an Iron Hands switch in. So if Iron Hands just comes in on like a revenge or a clean KO against Slowbro, it puts out a ton of pressure. So I kind of regret doing that. I should have just went into Blastoise to eat whatever hit it was going for. But ultimately, you know, I made that decision, and unfortunately, Hands goes down when Blastoise would have ate that hit insanely well. At this point, I think, okay, do I go into Blastoise now to pressure it out with Dark Pulse? Do I go to Rotom with the Choice Scarf? And I end up going to Blastoise. And now this just really basically tells me like that I should have done this last turn, because even though I would have taken Rocks, Chip, and Psychic, I would have still been pretty healthy and been able to take any one hit from Greninja. And I do decide, you know what, I want to get these Rocks away. So I'm going to Rapid Spin, get rid of the Rocks, so at least I'm not taking this Chip every single time one of my Pokemon come in, which I think is the right play, and I should have just done it last turn. They end up going for the Yawn, so now I'm in a spot that I could fall asleep next turn. And you're going to see what I end up going for is just to click the Flip turn. Now, this is because I don't want my Blastoise to fall asleep. One thing I didn't think about in this spot was that this thing could actually have Protect, technically. And if I go for Flip turn and they have Protect, I will fall asleep because it'll fail. Fortunately for me, they do not have Protect, or at least they didn't click it. So my Blastoise does not fall asleep, but now I'm still in a spot where I have to switch into something and take a hit. So yeah, I think, okay, ultimately, what have they shown me? They've shown me Psychic. They've shown me Yawn. I don't think this thing is going to have a Water attack just based on my team. I think it probably has Ice Beam, if anything, and we can pressure with a Volt Switch. Does go for the Psychic, so that's at least a correct read on my part. We take about 100 damage. Nothing crazy, though. And now I'm in this spot, and I think, okay, I can really threaten this thing with a Volt Switch. This thing has much better physical defense than it does special defense. So I could just threaten this thing out. I don't think they want to go hard Excadrill here because not only does Excadrill not have the speed boost, but it could just die to an overheat. So it doesn't necessarily pressure me offensively if it switches in. And it also can't take the overheat. So this should be a Tyranitar every time. So I basically should get momentum for free is my thought. And you're going to see they do bring up the Kaido. That is the Tyranitar. So Sand is going to come up again, which is a little annoying, but this thing is going to take Volt Switch Chip, and it's also going to take burn damage. So this thing is getting slowly whittled down, which is pretty nice for us. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I could go into something that resists damage from this pretty well with my SKARMORY. It is a Phys-Def set, and I do pressure this thing with a Body Press. This thing I don't think is going to want to stay in against me because, again, Body Press can basically just KO it. Body Press also can deal an insane amount of damage to Excadrill. So this SKARMORY actually puts up a lot of offensive pressure, so I think there's no way in hell it does anything but go into the Slowbro. So I'm just going to go for my Rocks here. I think about the play a little bit, thinking, okay, is Rocks the best play, or do I just double into my Rotom to, again, put on offensive pressure? 20/20 hindsight, it's hard to say. Maybe the Rotom is a better play, but I felt like that was a little risky in case they did stay in with the Tyranitar. So ultimately, after bouncing around on this decision, I do just end up going in and clicking Stealth Rock. So they are going to swap this out, and I expect this to be the Slowbro. I don't really see like any other play that they could potentially make here, and that is exactly what they did. So honestly, the double into Rotom might have been a fantastic play, but I don't hate this play either, as it does give me Stealth Rocks, and it does at least punish the switch-ins. You know, if Tyranitar, Excadrill, Slowbro want to switch in and out like they have been, they will just take more and more chips. So I don't hate this play. I think the best play probably would have been the double, but again, that's really aggressive. If they just stay in and click Knockoff or Stone Edge, and my Rotom just dies, so hard to say. And now in this spot, I kind of think they could predict me going for a double into they could predict me going into Rotom and then just double into Tyranitar. So I, for a brief moment, think about going for Body Press, predicting that double. But I ultimately decide, you know what, the safer play is to probably go into something like my Blastoise or my Rotom here to just try and deal some damage. So that is what I'm going to end up doing here. I end up going into my Rotom. I know at this point, based on the damage that it did with Psychic, we should live that and a round of Sand no matter what. And then I put them in a precarious position here, because if I click Volt Switch into this thing, it's really good. If I click Overheat into Excadrill, it's really good. But they end up clicking Yawn, which is actually a little bit tougher than the Psychic. As Psychic, we would have just lived the hit and put out offensive pressure. But now we're in a tricky spot because next turn we will fall asleep. And so now I'm at this point thinking, okay, I could actually use this to my advantage. I think in this spot, they probably don't go Tyranitar because they're going to expect me to Volt Switch because they know that if I stay in and click an attack, I'm going to fall asleep. So I don't know if this is the like best play to make, but I just felt like in my bones, they're going Excadrill here. I just didn't think there was any world where they didn't. Even though Tyranitar is the safe play, they have this Yawn pressure and they want to take advantage of it. They don't want to let me Volt Switch, so I end up actually clicking Overheat, which is a crazy play because if they stay in here, go to Tyranitar, this is an awful play for me. But I make this read perfectly and they go into Frankie, they go into Excadrill. I'm praying, please connect on this Overheat, because if I do, this thing is dead, and we do. This thing is not Akaberry. This thing goes down in one hit, and we are sitting kind of nice with the Excadrill out of the way. This thing is the fastest thing in the game. It is now a massive threat gone, and I'm really happy about this play. However, this does put me in a weird spot because my Rotom is now asleep. And something that I didn't think about at the time is I might have a tough time getting rid of this Slowbro, depending on its set, because my Iron Hands is dead and Rotom is really the only thing that hard pressures it offensively. That being said, the Greninja is going to come in, it's going to take Stealth Rock Chip, and now I decide, okay, do I need to keep this Rotom that is asleep alive? And ultimately, I think I haven't taken a turn of sleep yet, so I would have to be able to live at least one hit from something, and then basically hope to wake up on turn 2. And the only mon I can really do that in front of is Slowbro, and then I have to pray. So ultimately, I decide to just stay in. I'm Scarfed, so I click Overheat, and I expect this thing to just take me out with either a Surf or Dark Pulse, which is exactly what it's going to do. So it goes Protean, it goes Dark Pulse. My Rotom does not die, but it is going to die to the Sandstorm on the very next bit of damage here. So good and bad for me. Obviously, the read on the Excadrill, I made the read correctly. It's just whether or not that is the right play. That is what we're going to see depending on how these turns play out. We have 3 Mons alive. I believe they have 3 Mons alive as well, so it's a pretty even game up to this point. And now I'm thinking, okay, Blastoise can take any hit that it goes for. Dragonite can also pressure a kill with E-Speed. And now if I go into Dragonite and click E-Speed and go into Slowbro, I don't make a ton of progress, but I at least do some damage. It would take Stealth Rock's chip. If I go into Blastoise, I'm not sure that it gets me enough progress because it can just U-turn out with Greninja. So I ultimately decide, you know what? I'm at least going to force them to make some decisions. They don't know my full set. Maybe I have Thunder Punch or something like that. I don't, but they don't necessarily know that. And so ultimately I decide I'm just going to go for E-Speed here because if they don't hard swap, this Greninja is going to die and is a threat that I want out of the way. There was a part of me that thought about going for Dragon Dance here, but just getting into +1, if the Ice Beam is there for the Slowbro, it won't really matter in the end. So I think Extreme Speed is just my play. They're going to hard swap, so I'm thinking, darn it, this is the Slowbro coming in. It's actually not. It's the Tyranitar. That is not what I expected, but I'm very happy about this because the Stealth Rock chip is going to come in, Extreme Speed is going to come in, they're still going to take burn damage, and I realize unless this thing is like max speed, which based on the damage that we're doing to this thing, I don't think it can be, we are going to be faster on our Dragonite, and Earthquake can just pick up a KO. So we either are going to get chip on the Slowbro that swaps in, or we're going to take out this Tyranitar and get rid of this pesky sand. Either way, I am thrilled about this switch in. I'm very happy that it's not Slowbro, and we're ultimately just going to go for EQ. We are faster, and this should always KO. Tyranitar goes down, and we are now in a 3v2 advantage, which I'm very, very excited about. So Greninja, again, is not a threat as long as Dragonite is alive, because Extreme Speed can just take it out. So Slowbro is really like the only Pokemon that I have to worry about at this point, and that is exactly what's going to come in. And now, at this point, I don't think they ever revealed Ice Beam. They revealed Psychic and Yawn, I believe, up to this point. And I decide, you know what? I've got to go into my Blastoise here, take whatever hit it's going to go for. Hopefully I can just like get some damage on with Dark Pulse. I will at least pressure it out into the Greninja so I can make it into the point where Slowbro is the only thing left alive. And if it is, it cannot keep proccing Regenerator and getting its HP back every time it swaps in. So we're going to swap out Huey. They're obviously going to stay in here. We're going to go into the Blastoise. Soldier Boy comes in. And we should eat this Ice Beam or Psychic very well. It does end up being the Ice Beam. We take barely any damage. We only take 20, and we get frozen. We get completely frozen, which is really unfortunate, because if you guys don't know how freeze works, this could last forever. There's literally no rules on freeze. We could wake up right now, or we could unfreeze right now, or we could be frozen for 20 turns. There's literally nothing on freeze. It's just RNG. So I'm thinking, okay, do I just stay in and try and work through this? I don't think this is a setup variant, so I think I just have to stay in and click Dark Pulse. And we do stay in and click Dark Pulse, but we are still frozen solid, so we do not take any damage. So that goes for the Psychic. How much damage are we going to take? About 60, 57, something like that, I think is what we take. But it's unfortunate as we are frozen and they are just getting Lefty's recovery, which is kind of frustrating. But we are still frozen and I'm just praying I need to unthaw. I really don't have another play other than this. And thankfully, we do thaw out on the second turn. So only one turn of freeze being really painful, but that Dark Pulse does not do nearly as much as I'd like. We do get a flinch back though, which is kind of nice because now this does not deal more damage to us. So we do get a little bit of RNG back in our favor. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, there's a good chance they just go into Greninja here. So I think about just clicking Flip Turn because I think Greninja might come in and it would allow me to go into my Dragonite where I can just like E-Speed it or something like that. But ultimately, I think if Greninja does come in, it's not going to deal a ton of damage to me and I should be able to just click it and kill it on the next turn. So I think at the end of the day, Dark Pulse is just my best click because the Slowbro is more of a threat than the Greninja is. So we do go for the Dark Pulse. We deal a chunk of damage. And I'm feeling pretty decent about this fight. It's going to have to swap out to get Regenerator sometime soon. Psychic is going to hit us for about 50 damage again, and they're going to get the lefties. And now at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I actually don't... This game is probably going to come down to one of two situations. It depends on the set for this Slowbro. Is its last move like something like Scald? Is it a water move? Or is it Slack Off, which is Recovery? If it's Scald, I think I guaranteed win this game every single time. If it's Slack Off, I don't think I can actually kill this Slowbro because I don't think my Pokemon have enough damage to get through it. And so that is something I'm worried about for the moment. But at this point, because it swaps out, to get the regenerator, this actually makes me feel a little better because I'm thinking if it had slack off, it would probably just stay in and go for that. I don't think it would risk switching into this Greninja here, as we Dark Pulse, just barely don't kill it. And now Greninja is going to go for an attack, but I think, is it worth risking my Blastoise here? Do I go into Queen Maeve to take whatever hit it goes for and just body press back? I think about it a little bit, and ultimately I think I decide to just stay in with my Blastoise, as depending on the set for the Slowbro, it might be more useful to have SKARMORY healthy to be able to roost up and just slowly deal damage with Night Slash and basically just recover ourselves. So here I end up just staying in with my Blastoise, and I'm just going to click Dark Pulse as I know it's going to kill Greninja. I'm pretty sure we're going to live any one hit this thing goes for. Unless it's Specs, then maybe we don't. It goes for the Dark Pulse, and it does barely any damage to us. We get the Dark Pulse off, and Blastoise is going to claim another kill. Second kill of the season. Happy to see it. And now we are in a 3v1 advantage. And now at this point, this comes back to what I had said before. If this thing doesn't have slack off, I basically win the game guaranteed. If it does have slack off, I don't think I have a way to kill this. So my choice here is, do I just stay in and click Dark Pulse and let Blastoise die, or do I flip turn out into SKARMORY? Because in my opinion, it doesn't really matter what I do. The whole game comes down to whether or not they have slack off here. I'm just going to Dark Pulse to try and get some damage. Maybe I get a flinch, and we get a decent chunk here, and we're going to see what they go for. They go for the Psychic. This makes me feel a little better, thinking maybe they don't have slack off. And I think, you know what, at this point, if they don't have it, then I'm golden. I might as well just make this a 3-0 win versus 2-0. I don't play for differential, but again, the play doesn't matter. If they have slack off, I can never kill this. If they do have it, or if they don't have it, then I just get a 3-0 instead of a 2-0. So I'm going to click Flip Turn here just to basically go into my SKARMORY to try and save my Blastoise. So that is what I go for. Deals a small amount of damage. And we are going to flip out into my SKARMORY, who can basically just roost off any damage that this thing is going to go for. So we go into Queen Maeve, we go into SKARMORY. Do they click Psychic? No, they do not. They click Slack Off. And at this point, I'm thinking, shit, I don't think I can kill this thing. I haven't seen how much damage that Dragonite can do to this. Maybe it can, but I know this thing has Ice Beam. And I don't know if I can actually break it. So I decide, you know what, I'm going to at least click Night Slash one time and see how much damage we can do. And I think with that amount of damage, we might be able to win, but that's a crit. So that is not really good for me. And it's going to go for Yawn. And now at this point, this is tricky because it can kind of Yawn cycle me. Try to basically put something to sleep. It can put out damage. It can slack off. And I'm in a tough spot. So realistically, I know I probably can't break this thing unless Dragonite does way more damage than I expect, but I don't think that's true. So I think I have to kind of cycle here. I don't really know what to do. I'm going to go into Blastoise, and because I want to try and kill this thing. Now, in 2020 hindsight, what I can do here is literally just play to PP stall or win on timer, but the mutual game timer is not visible. I don't know how much time is left. And at this point, I think I would have had to do this for 30 minutes. So I basically would have just had to waste this person's time for 30 minutes with SKARMORY basically just roosting off the damage that it goes for every time. It would put me to sleep, and then I would just roost over and over. And I say, I don't want to play that game. I'm going to sack off Blastoise. I'm going to go into Dragonite. And if Dragonite does enough damage, then that's great. So that's basically what I decide to do. I go into Stoice. The Psychic's going to come through. And unfortunately, Blastoise is going to go down. And now I'm saying moment of truth here because I don't want to be here for 30 minutes. I don't want to play that stall game with SKARMORY. So I'm going to go into Dragonite and just pray that I can somehow deal enough damage that maybe, you know, a crit into a Night Slash can maybe take it down or something like that. So I'm going to go into Huey here. And unfortunately, I don't have anything super effective. So the biggest damage that I can do to this thing is an EQ. Now, I think about going for Dragon Dance, but it's going to Ice Beam me. And I think there's a chance that I die to that attack. So I might as well just try and get as much damage as I possibly can. Earthquake really is the best move that I have. So I'm going to click the Earthquake, and I'm praying this does close to 40 to 50%. It does not do nearly enough. They do go for the Ice Beam here, and we live it. So this makes the play really, really interesting because I know Earthquake is not going to kill, and they're just going to click Slack Off here. I'm not going to make any progress with Earthquake, so they're going to click Slack Off, and I decide, okay, I really didn't want to play to try and like timer stall or PP stall them on the mutual timer, but I know that I have 2 Pokemon alive and they only have 1. So the only way that I can possibly win this game is to basically waste both of our times for 25 to 30 minutes, basically just trying to Night Slash and Roost and hope they don't do enough damage while I'm like asleep to basically, you know, break through. Hopefully this makes sense, but this is what I'm going for because I know I can never kill this thing. It's just, can I survive until the game's over? Our timers, we're going to make quick plays, but the mutual timer is 60 minutes. And sometimes you can reach that without reaching your own personal timer. So I know in this spot, they're going to click yawn, and I'm just going to stay in. I'm going to try and night slash them and basically roost up when they deal damage to me, and just pray that they're going to run out of moves they can use, or we're going to go to timer. And this is really unfortunate. I absolutely hate playing this way. Again, I probably could have done this when I had 3 Pokemon alive with the Blastoise, but I really just didn't want to do that. That felt like a huge waste of our times. I wasn't sure if it would work or not, but after this damage from the Psychic, I'm seeing we went down to 264, so we should always live 3. So I think I can always basically roost off whatever damage that it goes for. So I think I might be able to PP stall this in this spot. We are fast asleep, and it basically depends on how many turns we stay asleep. We can sleep for either 1 to 3 turns. So at this point, the Psychic hits, and at this point I'm thinking, crap. If he gets a 10% Spadef drop on his Psychic, we very realistically could lose this game. That felt kind of unlosable, but that is the spot we're in, and I just have to kind of keep roosting. So Queen Maeve has taken a really long nap, has decided to basically sleep as long as she possibly can, as the Psychic is going to come through. So we've already fell asleep for 2 turns here. And do we wake up on turn number 3 is the question. We should live 1 more Psychic regardless. But that is how we're going to play this out. And for the next sequence here, I might end up speeding this up in post-production. I'm not really sure. We're going to fall asleep into the 3rd turn. I'm hoping not to see a special defense drop, as we're going to go down to 53 HP, and we do not see a drop. So at this point, we can still keep stalling this. But I don't really have another play other than doing this. And this feels so cringy and awful. We do wake up because we've been asleep for 3 turns. We're going to roost up. And now we just kind of start this dance over again, which is really, really annoying. And so to not waste your guys' time, I'm going to fast forward a little bit to basically the exact same sequence happened again. We end up getting a 3-turn sleep here. They're going to hit the Psychic, and after a number of Psychics, they eventually do get the 10% special defense drop, which puts us in range to die from a Psychic here. So you're going to see on this next turn, we are going to die from this thing, and there's really nothing we can do about it. I don't know whether I could have stalled this out when I had 3 Pokemon left available, because Dragonite would have been able to live a hit. Blastoise would not have been able to live a hit. I don't know. I'm not sure how long I could have stalled this for. Probably not long enough. And I don't think I deserve to win this game. But I'm not going to lie, this was kind of a lame way to lose. It's just hard to, because I couldn't break this guy. He just happened to have leftovers, and he had Slack Off. And yeah, I just couldn't survive long enough. And I really didn't want to go for like sitting here for 30 minutes. I only did it as a last resort because that's kind of all I could do. But at the end of the day, Earthquake's going to come off here. They eventually broke through the SKARMORY, and we're going to lose this game 1-0, which is really, really tough. Again, shout out to Tog. They played this game really well. They have a really scary team. That 0-5 record does not say anything about them. That was not them playing. And this was a brand new team. It was actually kind of tough to prep for because they didn't really have any like footage to go off of on how they played. But yeah, we end up losing this as a close 1-0. So definitely a tricky battle. I will say 2 things about this match. So I think there were 2 plays that kind of like changed the game entirely. The first one was the second turn of the game. Obviously, we got lucky on turn 1. We dodged the Hurricane. But getting hit by the Hurricane and then getting confused and hitting ourselves is very... It's worth more than a Hurricane miss, I guess is what I'm saying, because hitting ourselves in confusion dealt 100 damage as opposed to like the 70 that we were taking from Hurricane, and we don't get the 90% damage on Zapdos on that turn. I ended up calcing it later, but basically if that confusion doesn't happen and they just land the first Hurricane, so if like no bad RNG goes for either one of us, we end up in that fight against Zapdos having roughly 150 more health than we would have had. Which in that spot lets us live an Earthquake from Excadrill. So we actually like come in, they can bring the Excadrill in, and we actually put on a decent amount of pressure. And even if we did want to switch out, like we don't die to a Psychic later from the Slowking, which brings me into the second part. So the thing that I could control in this game that I think was a huge misplay on my part was, I already talked about it, but bringing in the Iron Hands on the Psychic from Slowbro. I don't know why I did that. That was really dumb. Like in hindsight, that was the worst play I made all game. I even said it out loud to myself when I was playing this first game that, you know, the whole reason I kept Iron Hands alive in the first place was because it pressured Slowbro, and I was worried that I wouldn't have enough to pressure it if Iron Hands died. So I save it and then just throw it away for no reason. And if Iron Hands was alive in the end game here, I win this every single time because Terra Electric Thunder Punch just goes crazy into Slowbro, and there's very little they can do about it. So that was definitely the biggest misplay for me. I 100% should have went to Blastoise. I did it literally on the very next turn anyway. I had a perfect opportunity to take damage and spin away rocks, and that was just a huge misplay, and that was the game breaker. So as much as I, you know, want to blame like the confusion for the loss in this game, I could have still won this game had I just played better around that one turn. So that was really huge. And I had some positive RNG in my favor too, even though the crit on Weezing actually kind of backfired on me, but regardless, that's how she goes. So at this point, we're 2-4, but we're only -1 in differential. Amongst the teams that are 2-4, we have by far the best diff, and we're in 9th place. Top 8 make the playoffs. So even though it seems like our record is not good, we actually have a very realistic chance at making playoffs. So if we can just play clean the next few weeks, pick up at least 2, if not 3 wins, we should be able to make the bracket, and anything is possible once you do that. Other than my PPL NX run, I'm just kind of known for basically being a slow starter and then picking it up in the second half of the season into the playoffs, I feel like. I didn't want to do that this season, but that's kind of where we have put ourselves. So we have to win 2 out of the next 3 at least, if not all 3, and that's what we're going to intend to do. So we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully pick up a win against Viz. We'll see how it goes. But until next time, guys, have a wonderful day.